Before I hand the meeting over to the chairman, we do have all the registered public speakers admitted into the meeting. Could I please ask that you keep all your microphones switched to mute until you're invited by the chairman to speak at the relevant parts of the agenda. We do have 3 public question time speakers who will be speaking under agenda item 4, and the chairman will call you all in turn. Please can I remind you that we are webcast. If you do have anything in your backgrounds that you do not wish to be in the public domain, please can you take a few moments just to remove those items so you have the privacy that you wish for your home. We will be monitoring the chat function. If you do experience any problems, please just put a message in the chat function. We'll come back to you as quickly as we can. I'm now going to hand over to the Chairman, Mrs. Councillor Scattergood. Thank you, Mrs. Scattergood.
Thank you, Emma, and good evening, members, and good evening to anyone watching us on YouTube. Welcome to our first meeting of 2022. And can I wish you all a happy and healthy new year. Item 1, apologies for absence. We have no apologies. We're all here in attendance. Item 2, declarations of interest. Does any member wish to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest, other pecuniary interest or non-pecuniary interest relating to items on the agenda? Councillor Johnson.
Thank you. Just for the sake of clarity, this is obviously my actually first application. I've not spoken to anybody, not emailed anybody, had no contact with anybody or anything whatsoever to do with the area in question. That's just for clarity. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Beavers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and a similar interest. I'd also like to declare a non-pecuniary interest in, I know one of the speakers in a community capacity, and that's the Reverend of our parish.
Yep.
Thank you.
Councillor Swear.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just an MPI as an Essex County Council member in case it comes up in application 5A with regards to Sybil Hedingham. I'm also the county ward member, county division member. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No. That brings us on to item 3, minutes. Members, as you are aware, we have 7 sets of minutes to approve as a true record this evening. So firstly, I'm going to ask if anyone has anything they wish to mention on any of these minutes, because I hope and intend to be able to unblock the whole 7 sets of minutes and sign each one individually. Does anyone want to raise any issues on the 7 sets of minutes? Councillor Ritchie.
So can I just note one abstention for myself for the 28th September as I was not here.
Okay,
thank you, Madam Chairman.
That's fine, thank you. So I'm going to ask if someone would like to move that the records, all those sets of minutes are a true record. That is the minutes for the 28th of September, the 12th of October, the 26th of October, the 2nd of November, the 9th of November and the 23rd of November. Can I have you're moving them, Councillor Johnson? Thank you. Can I find a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Spray. All those in favour of me signing all these sets of minutes? Those against? Abstentions? Councillor Manor? Thank you so much. Sorry, I'll do them as quickly as I can, members. Thank you. Thank you. We now come on to item 4, public question time. I have 3 members of the public that wish to make a statement in this, under this item. These are items that are not on our agenda this evening. And the first person that wishes to make a statement is Mr. Alan Mckenzie. Mr. Mckenzie, would you like to make your statement, please? And I remind you, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you, and good evening. I actually have a general question about policy and procedure. It does arise from the letter received from the Ministry of Justice in 2016 and the Council's reply to it. So, in respect of planning policy and its due process, is there a policy laid down regarding a response to a government department's request for information about potential sites for a huge development? If there is not, does the Planning Committee consider that such a response should first come before the Planning Committee for due and proper consideration of the environmental, traffic, heritage, fauna and floral effects before any perfunctory response is made? And in either case, does the Planning Committee consider the response made by a corporate director to the Ministry of Justice Estate Directorate letter in 2016 was proportionate, professional, fully informative, not misleading, and reflected the view of the Council and the Planning Committee?
Thank you for your statement, Mr. Mckenzie. As this item is not on the agenda, the Council will provide you with a written response in accordance with the provisions within the Council's constitution. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next person wishing to make a statement in this under item 4 is Mrs. Beverly Alt. Mrs. Beverly Alt, would you like to make your statement, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening. The Council has a statement of community involvement. So can you tell me why Finchingfield Parish Council was the only parish council contacted by Braintree District Council in relation to the MOJ's scoping opinion letter, and that prison proposal? Thank you.
Thank you, Miss.
I do apologise to interrupt, but there was a slight break in the transmission. Could we invite Mrs. Hall to remake her statement?
Yes, we could.
Please.
Mrs. Hall, sorry, we had a break. We couldn't hear your full statement. Would you like to make it again for us, please?
Yes, I can.
Totally clear.
Yeah. The Council has a statement of community involvement. So can you tell me why Finchingfield Parish Council was the only parish council contacted by Braintree District Council in relation to the MOJ's scoping opinion letter, and no others which are directly affected by the huge scale of the Wethersfield prison proposal? Thank you.
Thank you for repeating that. I will give you the same answer as I gave to the previous speaker, that we will provide you with a written response. Thank you very much indeed. The next person wishing to make a statement under this item is Mr. Nick Chapman. Mr. Chapman, please.
Yeah, thank you, and Happy New Year, everybody. At present, the Defence Infrastructure Organisation seems only wants to deal with internal government departments in respect of proposals for the Wethersfield Air Base. Has Braintree District Council been asked if it wishes to use all or any part of RAF Wethersfield? Has Braintree District Council considered, or will it consider, the purchase of any buildings to use in support of the community, notably the school, social centre and gym, which are on the airfield, and any other such buildings which could be used for a doctor's surgery, nursery school, dentist, and so on? Will the Planning Committee ask the Defence Infrastructure Organisation why it will not engage with the community and others on the prospective use of the other 170 hectares not subject to the MOJ's proposals?
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Once again, you will get a written response from the Council. Thank you very much for your statement. Members, that brings us to the end of item 4. We now come on to item 5, the planning applications. And the first application is application number 21023964, 45 Swan Street, Sybil Headingham. I do have two speakers on this application. So could I invite the first speaker, which is the Rev Liz Paxton, to make her statement and remind her that she has 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, we're speaking about the planning application for Violet's vintage caravan, and I would like to support Nicola's application for that, to continue this business. As soon as Nicola started selling coffees and cake from this caravan, it was a hub for the villagers, and in particular, many of my rather older parishioners. As soon as the tables were established outside, it became one of the few COVID-safe places in the village where people could meet and enjoy coffee and cakes. You're probably aware that there are a lot of single-person households, often elderly, in Sybil Headingham, and the COVID restrictions have had a major impact in curtailing their social activities. Even when the churches needed to be closed, Violet was able to provide an extra outside venue for seeing others. When I'm there, I see people who I know would otherwise have seen no one else that day. Several are regulars and often eating subsidised cake and coffee. During lockdown, when it was safe to meet outside, Violet's became a place to hold pastoral conversations with my parishioners, somewhere where I could go when I needed to chat to a grieving spouse about and have private conversations, and just to enjoy Nicola's delicious menu. Most of the people I see there have walked because it's the confluence of public footpaths. But since we've become aware of the parking issue, I and others who drive tend to park in Hilton Way and walk down the footpath to the caravan. Nicola's done a great job in informing her customers of the need to keep Swan Chase accessible and to park considerately. There's been a lot of people that I know have written in, but also many people that have lobbied me, elderly, who are unable to make and log on to council websites and things, who've asked me to support this application.
Thank you very much indeed, Reverend Paxton. Thank you for your statement. The next person wishing to make a statement is Miss Nicola Littlejohn, and she is the applicant. Miss Littlejohn, can I invite you to make your statement, please, and remind you you have 3 minutes.
Yes, good evening. When I started Violet's back in October 2020, it was to try to help out with our household finances and to give me some self-respect. As a critical care nurse, my husband was spending every day caring for those suffering the very worst at the hands of this horrible new disease. And after losing my wedding cake business due to the same, I felt I needed to do something to feel like I was helping. I never expected Violet to become so popular or become a lifeline for so many during these dark days. But of everything I've done in my lifetime, it's this that I'm most proud. To be able to give some comfort, friendship and care to those alone in this scary new world, and later a place where people could meet safely with family and friends, was amazing and something I will treasure always. A customer once told me we had saved his life through COVID, and for me that has to be my greatest achievement. Violet's is beyond a business. It's a family where old and new friends are met with a warm welcome, served good food and never rushed away. Criticism has come from some with regard to traffic congestion they believe Violet's causes. To them I would say, come along for a while, enjoy a piece of cake and a cup of tea, and see that almost all our customers walk or cycle. Speak to me about your concerns and hopefully I can alleviate them. For those that have allegedly moved because of Violet's, if only they had come to me with their issues, we could have sorted them out. I'm grateful that the new people who have moved in do not have the same concerns, and I've enjoyed being able to come along and meet and make friends with villagers who they may never have seen. I've been accused by council staff that if given planning permission, I would take advantage and change my business to what I have no idea. Again, if that person had come along to the tea room prior to their report, instead of relying on their limited local knowledge, they would have seen for themselves the passion I have for my tea room. They would know that this has been a long-held dream that neither I or my customers would want to change. I could have told them that our Santa's Grotto is done for charity and to bring joy to local children who have lost so much of their childhood over the last 2 years, and my cake decoration. I also acknowledge and appreciate that I should have applied for planning permission prior to setting up, but I had contacted planning when I first started as a takeaway and was told planning permission was not needed. It never occurred to me that adding seating would have changed this. Closing Violets will not just mean the end of my business, the loss of 7 local people's jobs and a place where my autistic son has found confidence and has learnt the skills to help him in the future. It will see the breakup of our very special family. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for making your statement, Miss Littlejohn. Thank you. Members, that brings us to the end of people wishing to make a statement on this application. We'll now go to the presentation, which is going to be made by Juliet. Thank you, Juliet.
Yep, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Just going to share my screen. Okay, so this is a planning application at 45 Swan Street, Sybil Hedingham. It is a retrospective application that is seeking retention of a change of use from residential to part residential and part cafe and associated takeaway use. It's understood the use commenced during the first COVID lockdown. The application site, indicated by this red line, is situated to the west of Swan Street and adjacent to the junction with Alderford Street in Sybil Hedingham. It is located within the development boundary and within the designated conservation area. The site comprises of an end of terrace, Grade 2 listed building, with associated amenity space, cart lodge, a caravan and a gravelled area to the side. Although the site is situated on the main road through Sybil Hedingham, officers consider this to be a residential area. There are residential properties surrounding and abutting the site. Along the southern boundary of the site, so here is Swan Chase. This provides access to a few residential properties and also leads to a public right-of-way. There is a former public house located to the south of the site, just here. The site is situated approximately 270 metres to the south of the local centre for Sybil Hedingham, as defined on the proposals map of the local plan. This is where the main cluster of shops, local services and facilities for Sybil Hedingham and surrounding villages are located. There's also designated off-street car parking, public parking available in the local centre to serve these facilities and services, and a pedestrian crossing to enable safe access across the main road. This is the proposed block plan which has been submitted with the application. There are no external or internal alterations proposed to the main dwelling to facilitate the use as a cafe takeaway. However, it is noted that the Environmental Health Officer has raised an objection to the proposal, stating that it is not suitably designed or adapted for commercial use proposed. In a commercial kitchen, an extractor ventilation system would normally be expected. The Heritage Officer has also not objected to the application on grounds that no alterations are currently proposed to the listed building. However, he has stated that if alterations are required, such as a more commercial kitchen or extractor fan, then this could give a rise to concern from a heritage perspective. There is a caravan currently parked to the rear of the site, and that's indicated by this yellow block here. This caravan is used for preparing and serving food in addition to the kitchen situated in the main dwelling, where most of the food cooking and preparation is undertaken. This is shown by the blue hatched area here. There's also a customer toilet shown just here in this blue hatched area. There's a detached cart lodge which is set back from the road frontage, and that's indicated by this purple block on the plan. The submitted planning statement suggests that there are 4 tables and chairs within the cart lodge and 5 tables and 17 chairs situated outside for customer seating, as indicated on the orange parts of the plan that we can see here. This is a photo of the front of the site taken from the main road, and you gain access through going down the side a bit here. This photo shows the relationship with Swan Chase next to the site. We can also see in the photo a glimpse of the cart lodge and some of the cafe seating, and you can just make out the former public house next door, which is clearer in this photo. Planning permission has previously been granted for conversion of this former public house into residential use, although it has not yet been implemented. This is another view of the site from the main road, and we can just see the caravan in the background, the tables, chairs and signage. And if we start to look at photos within the site, this is the cart lodge. As you can see, there are furniture and fixings within the cart lodge associated with the cafe use. It wouldn't appear practical to move this furniture out of there after closing hours to facilitate use of the cart lodge for parking of a vehicle. The front of the cart lodge is open and there are no doors enclosing the space. The application isn't proposing to use the premises for events. However, it has been noted from social media pages that hen party has taken place and a Halloween event has been held in the cart lodge. This is a photo which is of the caravan, as you can see, and this is used for preparing and service of food. We can see here the relationship between the side of the caravan and the cart lodge. And this photo is taken from the caravan looking back towards the road. And this photo here is taken next to the caravan, and we can see the rear part of the site is elevated and fenced off. And then just looking at this photo, there is a gate here which provides access to the public toilet, which has an outside door to the back of the main dwelling. The elevated area we can see here and this part here are outside of the orange area that we looked at earlier on the block plan. So they're not proposed to be used for seating. This area is proposed to be retained as the private amenity space for the occupiers of the house and the applicants, the application. There is concern from officers that if a cafe use was granted and there was a desire to expand in the future, this area could be lost to further seating. This photo shows the relationship of the cart lodge and the caravan with the main dwelling. You can see how the tables and chairs are laid out on the gravelled area, and you can also just make out the door there, which is into the domestic, which is also the domestic kitchen for the main dwelling. Looking at the site in a wider context, this photo is taken from the site looking towards Alderford Street. There are no parking restrictions here, but you can see there are already quite a few cars parked. And this photo was taken at 9:30 in the morning, and there is no pedestrian crossing here. And this is the view from Alderford Street, looking towards the site, and you can just make out the bus stop here on the left, and the site's just there. And then this is the view looking sort of north on approach into Sybil Headingham, and you can see the sites there. And then this is another photo taken from the main road, looking in the southerly direction, and the site's on the right. Although there are no cars in this photo, it is usually a busy road. On-street parking can quickly cause congestion and backlogs as the road inclines towards the village. There is concern that on-street parking could cause visibility issues for residents that live on the main road who are trying to get in and out of their driveways. It is noted that the applicants have erected signage asking people not to block Swan Chase. However, you're relying on people's goodwill to pay attention to this. So there are 3 recommended reasons for refusal, as set out on page 28 of the committee report. Reason 1 refers to the proposal for a cafe takeaway use in a residential garden driveway and partially within a domestic premises, conflicting with the residential use of the site. It also refers to the site being situated outside of the local centre for Sybil Headingham, where such uses are encouraged. There is also concern that the proposed use could potentially, with the required extraction and ventilation equipment required, give rise to noise and smell harms to neighbouring amenity and also to the listed building itself. Reason 2, there is concern that on-street parking and congestion could occur within the locality due to the lack of public off-street parking available, and there's obviously associated highway safety concerns with that. And the proposal will also result in the loss of residential parking for most part of the week for the existing residential use. Finally, reason 3, a financial contribution of £5,000 was sought from the Highway Authority towards waiting restrictions within the highway. The applicants have indicated their unwillingness to provide a contribution as set out in the report, and therefore a Section 106 agreement has not been drafted. In summary, whilst officers are sympathetic to the personal circumstances and aspirations of the applicants, the application has been assessed on whether the land use proposed is acceptable. The proposed use goes with the land and not with the applicant. The proposal has created social and economic opportunities, and however, the benefits of the proposal are not outweighed against the harms as detailed in the committee report. Thank you.
Thank you, Juliet. Thank you very much indeed. Members. Councillor Mrs. Beavers.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and I'm more than happy to start a conversation on this application this evening. It is in my ward, and I'm very familiar with Swan Street, and I live just off Alderford Street, so I kind of know this part of the village quite well. I just would like to underline some of the comments previously made, and one is really mindful as to how this very small-scale business actually was established during COVID. And I remember when it was started, because many residents were saying to me, "Have you seen the little violet caravan?" And I was sort of saying, "What's everyone talking about?" I hadn't even noticed it. And I really had to slow down in the traffic for me to actually first even see the little caravan. And, that's when the road, wasn't particularly busy, and I really had to slow down to be able to sort of glance it. So I don't feel that it's detrimental to this sort of conservation part of the village. If I may, Madam Chairman, I think possibly page 11, 1.8, the last paragraph in our report is quite a good place to start, because it says, on balance, the benefits of the proposal are not outweighed by the harm of this recommendation, and so therefore the application is refused. Now, members would be aware there has been a petition that's been signed for over 2,000 signatures, and because this is a planning application, that petition sort of sits with this application process, and I've taken advice on that, and I've been advised of that. But on balance, and bearing that in mind, is the application detrimental to this community? I don't believe it is, and 2,000 people, local residents and customers, are also inclined to agree with me. And I think our Reverend actually made some really quite poignant remarks this evening about the community benefit that this little outlet has brought to this village. There's a lot of walking that goes on around Sybil Headingham. In fact, I think out of the whole of the district, it's one of the areas where we've got the most footpaths. So there is a lot of walking and walking groups that come to the village and have done for many years and park all over the place. I do think that this application could be considered this evening, varied by some conditions, and I'd just like to set out a couple of possible proposals. The application could be set in condition that it was only used for, say, a period of 3 years, and only for Nicola as the tenant, because we're not looking at, as far as I can see from the application and the officer's comments this evening, in any way at making any changes in the house whatsoever. In actual fact, in some respects, I feel that some of the report is rather ambiguous. I don't even feel that there is a need for the kitchen in the house to be used at all. What needs to be done could be done through the little violet caravan as it started off. The officers this evening spoke about use of the toilet. Well, actually, if we were minded, the toilet facility doesn't even have to be used in that period. There is a little footpath close by where we have community toilets. So they're not actually that far away. The officer said that if there was a desire to expand, I'm not aware in anything I've read, actually, that there is a desire to expand. The officers also set out that there was quite a lot of parking in Alderford Street. Madam Chairman, there's always been a lot of parking in Alderford Street, and the cars that one sees parked in Alderford Street are the parking for the people that live there, because there isn't much parking in Alderford Street. And in my time as ward councillor, at one stage we were looking at permit parking, and the residents in the end agreed they didn't want to go down that line. So I don't really believe that this is having an impact so much on the local roads. We've spoken about possible congestion and issues with the highway. Now, I could agree with that if we were talking about a lorry outside the doctor's surgery, or a lorry outside Darkins, or a lorry outside the butcher's. I can think that I would feel that would cause congestion in the village, but I'm not aware we've ever had any congestion down this end of the village unless there were traffic lights. And in fact, there is parking provision in the front of the old Swan pub that belongs to Essex County Council that people use as well. So there is parking there. Not that I'm aware that many people park there in any case. So I guess for me, what I'd like a little bit more clarity from the officers is, how can the business continue to trade? I mean, can the purple caravan, the violet caravan, remain trading there? And she's already cooking there. Is she able to have some seating there in the little lean-to type garage thing? Or are we talking about closing it down altogether? Because I don't think that's what we're talking about this evening. I'm sure there must be some sort of community solution that could fit in with some conditions if we could get them set down. And finally, I just wanted to make the point that I think it was the figure of £5,000 for highways. I can't quite understand how we could have got to that figure of 5,000. We're only talking, I would imagine, about some lines to be painted on the road. Now, all of that said, and clearly this will be judged this evening on the merits of planning, but as ward member and someone, member of this committee reading the report and listening this evening, I just feel that some of it is a bit ambiguous and not quite how I understand it locally. I'm not at this stage going to move anything. I'd be very happy to listen to other comments first before I make any recommendation. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Beavers. Mrs. Beavers, the 5,000 was something that was asked for by Highways, not by us, so I don't know that we can clarify that. But I will ask Juliet if she'd respond to some of your queries before I move on.
Yep, thank you, and Katie will probably chip in as well. The NPPF is quite clear about granting temporary consents. That's one of the things that came in when it was revised. So I think there would be concern about granting it temporarily on a 3-year basis, in that it's likely to come in again in 3 years' time. And we would, I think it's probably better if it's a decision that's made as to whether it's acceptable or not. In terms of the using of the kitchen, the applicants themselves have shown the kitchen as being required for some of the cooking facilities to be taken, and that's shown on the block plan in the blue area, shaded area that we saw earlier. I don't know if Katie's got anything to add.
Is there anything you wish to add?
Yeah, I would just add that your comment about whether or not a lesser use or lesser intensive use of the site would require planning permission, any use of that site to act as a cafe or a takeaway in conjunction with that residential use is going to require permission. And also your comment about expanding, they might not have any, they might not want to expand at the moment, but if we approve permission, then that is unrestricted and we'd have no control beyond that point. And the site outlined in red, so basically the use could expand to fulfil the whole site outlined in red. And if planning permission is granted, we would have no control over that occurring.
Thank you both. Councillor Mrs Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. This is quite difficult for the Planning Committee because I'm aware, I'm sure we all are, because I think we all had a considerable number of emails from residents in support, very heartfelt. I read every single one, and I do appreciate that this is a very popular small business in this location, and it was set up, as Councillor Beavers said, actually during very, very difficult time during COVID, with extremely good intentions, and I take nothing away from the applicant with that. And it has continued, and obviously does continue to be very popular. As far as this committee is concerned, though, we have to make a decision based on planning grounds, and the number of comments that have come in support, and actually if it was the other way around, the number of comments that we do sometimes get frequently objecting to applications, those are not reasons to either refuse or approve an application. We can't judge it based on a popularity contest, if you like, I'll put it that way. So whilst I say I'm sure everybody else read and have felt sympathy with the comments that came in, we have to look at planning reasons. I've got just a few comments to make, not in any particular order of importance, apart I think probably from the first one I'm going to make, which is around granting permission for the sale of food on site, either to have on site or to take away. I think it's not a point well understood by everyone. I know that it's mentioned in the officer's report, but I think it's worth making clear that permission for food on the site goes with the site and not with the applicant. That's always been my understanding, and that is clarified in the officer's report. So if the applicant decides to move or chooses to move, and I'm not suggesting she is at all, but if she does in a year, 2, 3 years' time, that permission for food stays with the site. And you could have anybody coming in there and deciding to do something completely different. And it would not necessarily be, tea, coffee and cakes. It could be a very different type of food, which could well produce very different sort of odours and so on, and different parking issues. And I do think that bears making clear that the permission for food goes with the site and not with the applicant. And it is in the report, and I will link it to another problem which is around the ventilation system. So page 22, points 11.4 to 11.47 to 11.49, comments by the Environmental Health Officer, who is a consultee, and who points out that there is currently no extract ventilation system, which there should be. That goes with a planning permission for the sale of food, and there isn't one planned. And again, I say, if the premises were to change hands at any stage, we would not, I think I'm right in saying, have any control as a local authority over the type of food that was sold or any ventilation system, because there isn't one there now. And the other problem with that is this is a listed building and it's in the conservation area. So I think, on experience, we would be reluctant, if not unlikely, to grant planning permission to put the extractor fans and so on, which are external as well as internal, onto a listed building. So that's a bit of a problem straight away. I've just mentioned parking because that has come up a lot in the emails we've received and also in the representations made this evening. currently, it's a very informal arrangement. I understand that there were parking problems early on with, the lane being blocked off and I think driveways being blocked off. And the word locally is, well, that's stopped now because the applicant is making a very good job of ensuring that doesn't happen. And I'm sure she is, except it is, as I say, a very informal arrangement. Highways are not happy about that. They are the authority that we look to for advice on this, and they are saying very clearly that there needs to be dedicated, time-limited parking spaces. I understand the point being made by the applicant and others that, well, other businesses in the village don't have dedicated parking spaces, so why should that one? But again, the point is made on page 19, point 11.3.8, that those businesses are more in the centre of the village and they are very close to or have with them car parks. So like the Co-op, for example, where there's parking at the front and at the rear. Other businesses, there are lay-bys and there's off-street parking which can be used. And this is in a residential home at the end of the village, and Highways requirement is that there is parking provided. And I know we grumble quite a lot on this committee about responses from Highways. Sometimes we don't always agree with what they say, but we do have to pay attention to their views, and their view is there needs to be dedicated parking here. And I think finally, one sort of, small point, which has been mentioned, which is around, it's point 6.4, page 13, the use of bathroom facilities, which is the bathroom in the applicant's home, which is accessed from the rear, I think, through a separate door, which is fine. But nevertheless, it is a bathroom in somebody's house. The same thing that sort of applies to the kitchen. I know that the caravan is used, and actually the officers, I don't think, have too much of a problem about the caravan as it is. It's quite small and tucked away at the back. But the kitchen is being used as a domestic kitchen alongside the commercial kitchen, and that does not seem to be appropriate. And I think the same applies to bathroom facilities, which I think they are very necessary. I don't know if it's mandatory, but I think it's quite necessary to have bathroom facilities on site. I'm not sure that having public toilet facilities, even if they're close by, is adequate, but I don't know. I could ask officers perhaps for a comment on that. But I certainly think the kitchen is also an issue. So sympathetic though I am, and I did go into Sybil Headingham, and I went there earlier today, parked and walked around. I knew where the site was anyway, and I appreciate the very good intentions behind this, but in planning terms, I think there is a lot wrong with it. And on that basis, Chairman, I will move officer's recommendation for refusal. I wouldn't mind a comment from the officer on the bathroom facilities issue, please. Thank you.
Before I move on and ask for that comment, I do need to see if we have a seconder in the room, please, for that. Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Now I come to Juliet to ask about the toilet facilities. Are such premises required to have?
Thank you for that. The environmental health officer hasn't made comment on that, but my understanding is that bathroom facilities are required for restaurant food and drink purposes. Katie, have you got?
As far as I'm aware, that's the case. Obviously, people can use the public toilet, but ideally we'd want one on site associated directly with the use. How likely is it people would leave the cafe to use a public toilet to then return? I find unlikely.
I know as a business that you're required to have toilet facilities for your staff, and therefore the staff are using the private facilities even if the public aren't. So I know that is a requirement. Now, Councillor Johnson, I come back to you now. Sorry, I had to just do it.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll just provide some facts here. No emotion. There's an awful lot of emotion relative to this application. It is a very busy road. Those of us who have tried to exit Alderford Street It's difficult and potentially dangerous with very fast traffic approaching from the direction of Braintree. You just can't see. Secondly, there is a very good cafe in the centre of the village, which provides parking, welcomes local older people, has public toilets, has seats and in and out, and actually has accolades from this council. Now, I use this council with the walkers, use this cafe with the walkers. Most of the people in the cafe yesterday were elderly people. So they all get there from somewhere, and it's actually right at the centre of one of the housing estates. I think there were more elderly people in there during the week than anybody else. The public toilets are, I would consider, a long walk. They're in the playing field. People would need to be fairly sure that they can last the duration to get there. That's a fact. The frontage on the Swan Public House, some years ago there was an application for some development there. At the time, Essex County Council was doing some roadworks and had directed traffic without permission across the frontage, which is privately owned, and caused considerable damage, as the current owner will testify. Just a few points. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone else wish to? Councillor Mrs. Parker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I completely understand why the officers have reached the conclusion that they have, and I do accept that this is quite an unusual location to have a cafe. You wouldn't expect to find a cafe set up in someone's private garden, and to have tables and chairs set up on the driveway. And obviously there is the use of the private kitchen for some food preparation and so on. I think the reasons, well, let me look at first of all, the reasons that have been given for recommending refusal. I suppose three grounds really. The amenity grounds. I normally would expect to see something like this, quite an emphasis on nuisance for neighbours, but I don't feel that is a particularly strong point here in terms of there hasn't been much objections from neighbours in terms of actual sort of nuisance caused by smells and noise and so on. The objections tend to have been more on the parking grounds. I think the grounds on amenity are more to do with the use of the private facilities, and in particular the requirement that a commercial operation would normally require to have an extraction fan to remove smells. I presume that is why it is, but there haven't been any complaints of smells, so I'm not sure how significant a concern that is. The other main concern seems to be the issue about parking, and I completely accept that there's loss of 2 parking spaces. I don't know how many cars there are, but certainly if there were 2 cars, they would have to park somewhere else. When I went there today, there was 1 car parked there in the driveway. Obviously, clearly, when the cafe is in operation, it has to go and find somewhere else to park. I would imagine the whole purpose of this cafe really is to provide somewhere for the people in Civil Headingham to go and have a cup of coffee, and, as the applicant said, set up during COVID times. And it really, I would imagine that the vast majority of people who actually visit this cafe actually probably walk there and live very close by. And there is quite a large housing estate behind this particular part of Swan Street. And there is a footpath which connects to the public right-of-way, so it's quite possible to access the cafe down that footpath. So it is possible to park on street at Hilton Way at the back, and to a lesser extent, I think, on Alderford Street, given the existing parking. But it doesn't seem to me that is a huge concern. As against that, there is there is a policy within the National Planning Policy Framework and within our local policies to support employment and to support particularly rural employment. And the fact that there is one cafe already doesn't mean there shouldn't be another cafe. And this obviously is providing some employment in the village. And this is somebody who's set up her own business, which I think is generally something we like to support. But I think the strongest thing for me is I do feel sometimes we don't place enough emphasis on the social dimension of sustainability. And clearly this cafe has been extremely, has provided great value in terms of the social sustainability, the ability of communities to see to people to meet one another, see one another, and to support village life. And for that reason, I've placed great weight on that. So I'm afraid I'm tending not to agree with the officers on this one. I do accept it is a very unusual application, but I think the social benefit has been so clearly demonstrated that I do think that outweighs the harms that have been identified. I'm also sort of a bit disturbed that Highways are asking for £5,000. I mean, that's going to absolutely kill off a business like this. I can't imagine the profits will be anywhere near enough to be able to absorb £5,000 for Highways to put up some parking restrictions. So I think that's I can't understand that at all. So I'm afraid I'm intending not to agree with officers on this one. Thank you.
I wonder, have you taken into account the environmental officers' comments, which I find the most important, regarding the kitchen use, that you cannot have a household kitchen used for commercial preparation of food?
Yes, I have, but I do agree that that is a harm on that side.
Councillor Ritchie, then I'll come back to you, Councillor Mrs. Beavers, after Councillor Ritchie.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've listened really carefully to all of the comments so far this evening, and I tend to find myself kind of agreeing, certainly with some of the softer elements of what this is providing for the village of Headingham and the people that have used it. However, with my planning hat on, I have to be clear and focused that the planning consent will sit with this property. And my overwhelming concern is, despite the comments of Councillor Beavers, Councillor Andy Parker, and from the sentiment that we've all seen from the emails that we've received over the past 2 weeks, the planning consent will sit with the property. And if there is a change of circumstance, and as we know, there is no plans for a change of ownership, but if there was, and that was to turn into something other than a fantastic tea and cake shop, then we will be held to account for the issues that might cause to the residents that we can't foresee right now. And unfortunately, it will be with a heavy heart, because we do see the benefit that this has brought to the area. But with that single planning matter focus in mind, I will have to side with officers' recommendations to unfortunately refuse this application. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. Councillor Mrs. Beavers, I'll let you come back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I just wanted to come back on just a couple of items of clarity, if I may. And I may just have, not read it quite right in the report, and I apologise if I'm not understanding correctly. But and Councillor Spray also mentioned that the officers don't have an issue with the caravan itself. So, but then the officer said any use would have to require planning permission. But are we not saying that the actual caravan can continue to trade even if the application, because the application this evening is about the house and greater use of the house, yet actually the house doesn't have to be used. She can still continue to trade from the caravan, is my understanding.
The planning application is for the whole site that we're looking at tonight, not just for the caravan, Councillor Mrs. Beavers. That is a totally separate issue. What we're looking at is what we have been asked to look at. And I'll ask Juliet or Katie if they wish to respond in a sec.
Yeah, that's the case. So the planning this application covers the whole site. So planning permission is required for that caravan to be used as it is being used, regardless of whether or not the house is being used also.
Okay. Does anyone else wish to add? Councillor Mrs. Spray.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify about the caravan, I think what I meant was that I don't think the officers have a problem with the caravan as a caravan. I mean, it is quite small, it's at the back. You know, it's not an absolutely huge caravan parked right at the front, but there is still the issue that it's being used as part of the business, and that's the issue, not the caravan as a vehicle itself. Thank you.
Councillor Ritchie.
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I will be really brief. Preempting that this may be a question that some of those who have written into this planning committee may have on their mind or may have even proposed, but can the planners confirm whether or not there's any case where a planning application has been granted for the sole applicant, and if that applicant moves away from that building, that application then becomes null and void, just for avoidance of any doubt? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you could make it a personal permission, but what we're saying to you is the use, regardless of who runs it there, is unacceptable, inappropriate, and also residential.
Well, members, it has been moved by Councillor Mrs. Spray and seconded by Councillor Johnson that we refuse this application. I'm going to put that to the vote now. All those in favour of refusal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Those 9. Thank you. Those against? 2, 3. Abstentions. Members, that application has been refused. Thank you very much indeed. And thank you, officers. Thank you, Juliet. We now come to the next application. And before I come to the application, I'd like to introduce Peter Lang to you. It's his first visit to our planning committee, and I welcome you. This application number is application 21030294, 3 Freeborns Road, Whittam. Can be found on pages 33 to 47. We have no speakers on this application, so I'll go straight to Peter for the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and good evening to members. For members' consideration is an application at number 3 Freeborns Road for a change of use from Class B2 General Industry to a flexible Class B2 General Industry and Class B8 storage and distribution use. It's important to stress at this moment this application that it is purely for a change of use and does not involve any internal or external alterations. As members may be aware, this application is extremely similar in scope and location to the next case, with the same agent and proposed change of use. However, these applications were submitted separately and owing to their footprint of over 1,000 square metres, these need to be determined separately by planning committee. What's shown on your screens is a location plan, which indicates that this site is located at the edge of the Whittam industrial area, employment area, with the wider industrial estate to the north, east and south, and to the west is a residential area. This site was previously used as an aluminium casting operation, but is now understood to be vacant. The site also contains associated office space, parking and a service yard. And here's some site photographs taken from an officer visit. Essentially, this is an industrial area and it's very mixed character and appearance, and well, this building kind of embodies that description. As I referred to earlier, this application is solely for a change of use, and that is what we are considering here. The major change here is the introduction of the B8 usage, with the historic B2 industrial usage being retained. This is considered to represent an appropriate use within an industrial area, furthering policy aims and with benefits to the local economy. No adverse impacts have been identified. Subject to conditions, it is therefore recommended that this application is approved.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And this up to members. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I'm very familiar with this site. In fact, I went past there today, as I do about once a week. I totally agree with the officer's report. The only thing I thought reading it was, yes, no physical changes are proposed to the building or structure, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there may be no change to the environmental conditions for residents who don't live that far away. For example, there could be more noise, there could be more light pollution, there could be more vehicle movements, etc. But we don't know that, and I take the point that, as officers say, we can't condition that. And I suppose if those things do occur, it would fall to environmental health law rather than planning law. So, on balance, obviously having the buildings reused on an allocated industrial site is a good thing. There are quite a number of vacant units actually on the Whittam Industrial Estate as a whole. There are some of us who far rather see them used than more greenfield sites being developed. So on all those grounds, Madam Chairman, I would propose we accept officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. It does say if additional machinery is added, then noise emissions should be controlled through condition. Perhaps there's something we should make sure. I haven't actually looked at the conditions on this one. I'm sorry.
I thought the conclusion was we weren't going to add conditions. I mean, I'm happy to propose it if we can.
I think given that the current building is unrestricted in terms of those kind of controls, we didn't think it was justified to add it on into the addition, in addition to the B8 use. But if any further applications come forward for additional plant or machinery at the site, we can then look to control it when we know.
At that time.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Does it find a seconder? Is because Councillor Mann, do you wish to speak?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, it's to the benefit of the local economy if we can get both these sites back into use. I would think entirely within policy, creating employment in an area that we have, in fact, in the local plan designated for employment. The sort of the B8 edition should make for a greater flexibility of use, and therefore increase the possibility of a relet. So very happy to support, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Does anyone else wish to add anything new further? No. Well, it has been moved by Councillor Abbott and seconded by Councillor Mann that we grant this application. All those in favour of granting it? That is unanimous. Thank you, members. We now come to the final application, which is a very similar application. It's application 21030330 full 16 to 18 Freeborns Road, Whittam. Over to you again, Peter, as I have no speakers on this application either.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For members' consideration is a similar application at number 16 to 18 Freeborns Road, Whittam, for a similar change of use from solely B2 to a flexible B2 and B8 usage. However, as said previously, it still needs to be determined separately. This site is located a little bit further into the industrial estate, away from any residential units. It is indicated similarly to be currently vacant, with historic use as an aluminium casting operation. As this block plan indicates, it's quite a large size ball round the corner. It consists of service yards, parking, office spaces, and various elements reflecting its historic usage. Here are some photos taken on site showing sort of one of the entrances, and then from the southern side along Freeborns Road. It's a big building. It consists of lots of elements that have been added at different points over time. As previously described, this proposal maintains existing usage and introduced a policy compliant B8 element. This fits into wider policy goals and has economic benefits for the local area. No adverse impacts have been identified. On this basis, the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Peter. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Very similar comments. I won't repeat them again, but in this case, as the officer rightly said, this is further away from residential properties and nearer the A12, where you could argue that there is already an adverse noise environment. And just to add for members' interest, if you don't go down that way that much, the nearby chicken factory, as we used to call it, has now been demolished, and that's the redevelopment there looks to be progressing. So all in all, it's bringing employment back to the area. So happy to move, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Mann, seconding.
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you.
And to say what I said before.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to add anything else? No? Well, it has been moved by Councillor Abbott and has seconded by Councillor Mann that we approve this application. All those in favour of approval? Once again, members, that is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Members, that brings us to the end of our first meeting of 2022, and I will close the meeting at 8:22 according to that clock and that one. Well, they're all the same. Gosh, that's a record to have 3 clocks in this room at the same time. Thank you very much, and good night and safe journey home, everyone. And thank you to the officers. And thank you to